Action cinema is often dismissed as noise, but at its best, it functions as a pressure test for filmmaking itself. These films push technology, storytelling, and ideology to their breaking points, revealing what a given era fears, values, and fantasizes about. Now, let's get into it. Number 1, Raiders of the Lost Ark. On a basic level, Raiders of the Lost Ark is simple. An archaeologist races Nazis to recover a biblical artifact before it can be weaponized. But that simplicity is the point. The film grossed nearly $390 million worldwide, becoming the highest grossing movie of its year and instantly reviving the action-adventure genre as a commercial force. But it isn't its box office turnout that makes it one of the best. Instead, it's the blueprint it created. The thing is, before Raiders of the Lost Ark, action cinema often leaned either toward raw spectacle or pulp simplicity. Then Steven Spielberg and George Lucas fused both impulses into something more durable, a modern blueprint for action-adventure that still governs the genre. Raiders didn't just revive the Saturday screenings. It translated it into a cinematic language built on momentum, clarity, and character. Its most radical move was treating pacing as a narrative engine. Action isn't decoration here, it is the story. Each set piece flows naturally from the last, driven by character decisions rather than arbitrary escalation. The boulder chase, the truck convoy, the airplane fight, none exist to top what came before. They advance the plot, reveal personality, and sustain rhythm. Spielberg turned motion into meaning. And then there's the key innovation, Indiana Jones himself. He's not an invincible hero, but a capable, fallible one. He gets hurt. He's afraid of snakes.
Big snake in the plane, Chuck!
He improvises under pressure. This human vulnerability gives the action stakes and texture. Stunts are also designed around character, not superhuman ability, grounding even the most outrageous sequences in emotional logic. That approach would become foundational in future classics ranging from Die Hard to The Mummy to Uncharted. Raiders also codified stunt-driven storytelling. Practical effects, spatial coherence, and clear geography ensure the audience always understands where they are and why it matters. Action is readable, playful, and precise. Humor coexists with peril not as a tonal contradiction, but as reinforcement. Laughter releases tension so the danger can hit harder when it returns. This balance would define blockbuster adventure for decades. Most importantly, Raiders proved that action rooted in character endures. Its influence stretches across Hollywood's biggest franchises, from globe-trotting treasure hunts to theme park rides masquerading as movies. Yet few have matched its effortless sense of joy. The film understands that action works best when it feels like play, especially when danger thrills rather than overwhelms. Finally, Raiders of the Lost Ark established action as narrative propulsion, movement with purpose, spectacle with soul. It didn't chase escalation, it perfected containment, and in doing so, it gave Hollywood a grammar it's still speaking. And as action cinema moved forward, that sense of control would start to fracture. Raiders offered danger without punishment. Violence is play, risk without cost. But the next evolution would strip that safety net away. Because once the genre turned inward, action stopped being about adventure and started being about survival. Number 2, Aliens. If Raiders of the Lost Ark treated action as play, Aliens treated it as pressure. Unlike Raiders of the Lost Ark, Aliens takes a straightforward premise. A rescue mission gone wrong, then transforms it into something emotionally loaded. Here, Ellen Ripley returns to face the creatures that traumatized her, this time with a squad of Marines. The film was a major box office success and became one of the most influential action films of the decade. James Cameron didn't just expand the world of Alien, he rewired action cinema by proving that spectacle works best when it's built on emotional infrastructure. This wasn't an adventure anymore, this was survival. Before Aliens, military action escalation usually meant more firepower, bigger explosions, and higher body counts. Cameron's key shift was internal. Escalation here is emotional before it's physical. The film begins by carefully constructing relationships, hierarchies, and vulnerabilities. So when the shooting started, it didn't feel exciting. It felt catastrophic. Every loss registered because the film has already taught us who these people are and why they matter. The ensemble is the innovation. Aliens normalized team-based action where every character serves a narrative function, not just a tactical one. Each Marine carries a distinct personality, fear response, and breaking point. As the group collapses under pressure, the action becomes a study in systems failing. Military doctrine, technology, ego, and command structures all erode in real time. Combat is not triumphant, it's disorienting. At the center of this chaos is Ellen Ripley, one of the most consequential action protagonists ever put on screen. Ripley isn't framed as exceptional because she's stronger or more violent. She's exceptional because she understands the threat and refuses to deny it. Her authority is earned through experience and competence, not bravado. The film quietly redefined what leadership in action cinema could look like. Protective rather than dominant. Strategic rather than performative. This recalibration would echo for decades, from Terminator 2 to Edge of Tomorrow to The Hurt Locker. Cameron also imported horror discipline directly into action scale. Tight geography, limited visibility, and sustained dread replaced the loose sprawl of traditional battle battle scenes. The iconic motion trackers, the sealed doors, the ceiling threats, these aren't gimmicks. They enforce anxiety while making the action feel claustrophobic and the victory feels provisional. Perhaps most importantly, Aliens introduced maternal stakes into action cinema without sentimentality. Ripley's bond with Newt transforms the violence into obligation. Survival isn't abstract or ideological, it's personal. The action doesn't ask how much damage can be done, but who must be protected at all costs. That emotional anchor is why the film still hits harder than louder, flashier successors. Aliens redefined action as endurance through solidarity. It proved that spectacle gains power when it's structured around fear, responsibility, and loss. And in doing so, it pushed the genre closer to realism, not in its aesthetics, but in its consequences. And once action movies learned how to hurt emotionally, the next evolution would make them hurt physically. Here, the scale shrank, and the hero would stop being a symbol and start being a body pushed to its limit. Number 3. Die Hard. If Aliens made action squirm, Die Hard made it hurt physically, and maybe spatially. Die Hard's plot is almost minimal. A cop trapped in a building during a hostage takeover, but that containment changed action cinema forever. Made for a modest budget and becoming a massive hit, the film redefined what an action hero could look like. John McTiernan's film didn't just redefine the action hero, it redefined the arena itself. By trapping its conflict inside a single building over a single night, Die Hard turned action inward, transforming spectacle into problem solving and vulnerability into suspense. Before Die Hard, action heroes were largely invulnerable forces, icons who impose themselves on the world. John McClane is the opposite. He reacts rather than dominates. He bleeds, he limps, he runs out of ammo and improvises solutions with tape, radios, and broken glass. This wasn't weakness as novelty, it was design. The film understands that intelligence under pressure is more compelling than brute force without consequence. The Nakatomi Plaza is the film's most important character. McTiernan's genius lies in treating architecture as narrative. Stairwells, elevator shafts, office floors, and unfinished construction zones become evolving tactical puzzles. The audience always knows where McClane is, what he's trying to do, and why each move costs him something. Geography isn't background, it's the engine of tension. This containment revolution reshaped the genre. By limiting scale, Die Hard amplified the stakes. There's no globe-trotting, no armies, just one man solving one problem at a time while the walls close in. The violence isn't about body count, it's about delay, distraction, and survival. Every choice is tactical, every mistake punished. The result is sustained tension rather than episodic release. Equally crucial is the recalibration of heroism. McClane isn't special because he's the best fighter in the room. He's special because he refuses to quit thinking. His victories come from observation, adaptation, and endurance. This reframing would ripple outward across the genre, influencing everything from Speed to The Fugitive to John Wick. Even films that chase larger spectacle borrowed Die Hard's core lesson. Vulnerability creates suspense. The film also introduced the modern villain as an intellectual equal. Hans Gruber isn't chaos. He's control. The action isn't a clash of strength, but a chess match played through architecture, timing, and deception. That balance elevated action narratives from endurance tests into strategic duels. Most importantly, Die Hard proved that limitation is power. By containing action, it intensified it. Grounding the hero elevated him. The film didn't ask how big action could get, it asked how smart it could be. And as the genre absorbed that lesson, the next evolution would push in the opposite direction. Once action mastered containment, it would break free from physical limits altogether, turning toward technology, spectacle, and the question of what happens when the human body is no longer the ceiling. Number 4. Terminator 2: Judgment Day. By the early 1990s, action cinema had mastered scale, containment, and endurance. Terminator 2 took a familiar chase structure and injected it with moral weight. The film grossed over $500 million worldwide, becoming one of the biggest action events of its era. Arnold Schwarzenegger retrained his physicality to appear restrained rather than aggressive, while Linda Hamilton underwent intense combat training to embody hardened survival. One thing you notice immediately is that the movie arrived not to reinvent the form, but to perfect it. James Cameron fused technological innovation with emotional and ethical weight, proving that spectacle didn't have to be empty and that velocity could carry meaning. The film's first great evolution is its structure. Terminator 2 is a sequel that doesn't repeat, it reverses. The monster becomes the protector. This inversion reframes every action beat as a question of responsibility rather than dominance. Now, violence isn't about winning, it's about preventing something worse. Action accelerates, but the stakes are no longer physical survival alone. They're existential. Cameron's most lasting contribution here is the integration of effects into narrative. The T-1000's liquid metal form wasn't just a technical breakthrough, it was a storytelling device. Its shape-shifting turns the environment itself into a threat, collapsing the boundary between space and antagonist. CGI isn't spectacle layered on top of the film, it is the film's logic. This would become the blueprint for modern effects-driven action, where technology extends the theme rather than interrupts it. Yet for all its innovation, Terminator 2 grounds its scale in human stakes. At its core is a surrogate family. Sarah Connor, hardened into near fanaticism, John Connor, a child forced into leadership, and a machine learning what it means to protect. The action derives its urgency from this dynamic. Every chase, every explosion is filtered through the question of what kind of future is being protected and at what cost. This reframing of violence is crucial. Terminator 2 interrogates the very tools it deploys. Guns are powerful, but restraint becomes heroic. Destruction is thrilling, but responsibility defines victory. The Terminator's evolving code, learning why humans cry, why life matters, turns action into ethical education. Few blockbusters before or since have asked their audience to cheer while also questioning why they're cheering. The film also set the benchmark for emotional spectacle. Its set pieces, the mall chase, the canal pursuit, the foundry climax, are massive yet legible, relentless yet purposeful. Cameron understands that clarity amplifies awe. Every beat is engineered, every escalation earned. This balance would define the next generation of blockbusters from Jurassic Park to The Dark Knight. Ultimately, Terminator 2 represents the moment action cinema fully matured. It proved that the biggest movies could also be the most thoughtful, that innovation could serve empathy, and that speed didn't have to outrun meaning. And once action learned how to carry moral weight at scale, the next question became unavoidable. If machines could think, choose, and learn, what happens when action stops being about bodies altogether and starts being about reality itself? Number 5. The Matrix. By the end of the 1990s, action cinema had learned how to perfect scale, emotion, and technology. The Matrix arrived not to refine that progress, but to rupture it. Lana and Lily Wachowski didn't just change how action looked, they changed what it meant. For the first time, combat wasn't simply physical conflict, it was a philosophical act. Action became awakening. The film's most visible contribution is aesthetic, but its real innovation is grammatical. Bullet time wasn't a gimmick, it was a new sentence structure for action cinema. By freezing motion and rotating perspective, The Matrix made the invisible visible, turning perception itself into spectacle. Action was no longer about speed alone, but about understanding the rules that governed reality. Once audiences learned to read this language, there was no going back. Just as crucial was the fusion of influences. Hong Kong martial arts choreography, cyberpunk futurism, anime abstraction, and religious myths weren't all just blended for novelty. They were unified into a single ideological system. Fights weren't about overpowering an enemy, they were about realizing constraints were artificial. When Neo bends physics, it's not bad writing, it's enlightenment. In this movie, victory comes through comprehension, not force. This reframing also altered the action protagonist. Neo doesn't become powerful by training harder or fighting longer. He becomes powerful by seeing things differently. Combat externalizes an internal shift. The kung fu, the gunplay, the wire work, all of it serves as a metaphor about control, freedom, and self-knowledge. Action becomes a visual language for philosophical inquiry, accessible without sacrificing intensity. The influence was immediate and vast. Superhero cinema absorbed its aesthetics wholesale, slow motion dodges, airborne combat, black leather seriousness, but also its premise that power is tied to belief and identity. Video games adopted its mechanics. Sci-fi borrowed its paranoia. Even films that misunderstood its depth replicated its surface because the grammar was irresistible. Yet The Matrix endures because it tied style to ideology. Its visual coolness isn't ornamental, it expresses a worldview. The sleekness reflects control. The rigidity reflects systems. And the moments of transcendence feel earned because they emerge from comprehension, not dominance. That alignment of form and meaning is rare in action cinema. Ultimately, The Matrix transformed action into a cognitive experience. It asked audiences not just to watch violence, but to question the reality that frames it. It proved that action films could be intellectual without losing mass appeal, and that philosophy could punch back. And once action learned how to question reality itself, the genre was ready for its next evolution. Because if the battlefield could be the mind, the next frontier wouldn't just be about awakening, it would be on ideology. Except this time, the conflict would wear a cape. Number 6. The Dark Knight. By 2008, action cinema had mastered spectacle, speed, and scale. The Dark Knight didn't try to outdo those elements, instead, it weaponized them. Christopher Nolan reframed action not as domination or release, but as ideological warfare. Violence here isn't thrilling. For its own sake, it's a stress test applied to systems, beliefs, and moral limit. Every explosion, chase, and confrontation exists to ask a question rather than provide catharsis. The film's defining shift is its refusal to treat action as physical victory. Batman doesn't win by overpowering enemies. He reacts, scrambles, and compromises. He's always one step behind events deliberately engineered to force impossible choices. The Joker isn't a rival, chasing control or conquest. He's a chaos principle, a figure whose only goal is to expose how fragile order really is.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
You know what I am? I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. You know, I just do things.
Here you can see both actors do exactly what is expected of them. Christian Bale trained to move heavier and more constrained, while Heath Ledger isolated himself to craft the Joker's unpredictable physicality. Action sequences become philosophical traps designed to reveal what people will do under pressure. This structure reshaped how action could function. The Hong Kong extradition, interrogation room, the ferry dilemma. These aren't set pieces built around escalation. They're ethical experiment. The audience isn't asked who will win, but what winning even means. When Batman saves the day, it comes at the cost of truth, reputation, and moral clarity. Resolution arrives through concealment and loss, not triumph. In doing so, The Dark Knight elevated the role of the antagonist across the genre. Villains were no longer obstacles to be defeated, but ideologies to be contended with. The Joker can't be stopped by force because force validates his worldview. This reframing echoed far beyond superhero cinema, influencing prestige action films that sought seriousness without irony and darkness without nihilism. The film also reset expectations for grounded realism. Not realism as grit or grime, but realism as consequence. Violence lingers, fear spreads, institutions bend. Action scenes don't reset the world, they deform it. That sense of permanence gave the genre a new weight, particularly in a post-9/11 cultural climate defined by distrust, surveillance, and moral compromise. What makes The Dark Knight one of the greatest action films isn't its scale or intensity, but its discipline. Action always advances the theme. Stakes are civic and psychological, not just personal, and the film is unafraid to end without reassurance. Order is preserved, but only through a lie. Its legacy is everywhere, often misunderstood. Many imitators borrowed its tone without grasping its structure, but the lesson remains intact. Action films don't just entertain, they argue. And The Dark Knight argues that sometimes the cost of saving the world is losing the right to be celebrated for it. And from here, action stops debating ideas altogether, because the next evolution doesn't argue with chaos or morality. It surrenders to motion, momentum, and survival. Number 7. Mad Max Fury Road. By the time Mad Max Fury Road arrived, action cinema had become bloated with explanation. Mythologies were spelled out, motivations verbalized, and set pieces padded with exposition. George Miller responded by removing almost all of it. What remained was action distilled to its most elemental form, movement with intent. Mad Max Fury Road doesn't tell its story, it drives it. The film's radical achievement is its commitment to visual language. Dialogue is minimal because it's unnecessary. Character, power, desperation, and hope are communicated through motion, framing, and rhythm. Every shot is legible. The camera stays oriented. The eye knows where to look. In an era of frenetic cutting and digital noise, Fury Road restores clarity as a moral principle of action filmmaking. Chaos is staged so precisely that it becomes readable, even elegant. At its core, the film treats action as choreography rather than escalation. The chase is the movie, but within that singular structure, meaning accumulates. Velocity becomes narrative. Repetition becomes transformation. What starts as survival gradually turns into rebellion, then sacrifice. Here, momentum itself is the theme. The film understands that action doesn't need pauses to be thoughtful. It can think at full speed. Equally transformative was its recommitment to practical stunts. Real vehicles, real performers. Real danger captured in camera. CGI is present, but only as reinforcement, never replacement. Most audiences watching in the theater never realized that Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy endured extreme physical conditions, performing demanding stunts under real heat, dust, and exhaustion. George Miller relied heavily on practical effects, restoring clarity and physical danger to large-scale action. This tactile physicality reasserted what action cinema had begun to forget. Weight matters, gravity matters, consequence matters. You feel the risk because the film respects it. Fury Road also reframed heroism. Max isn't a conquering figure. He's a catalyst who eventually steps aside. The emotional spine belongs to Furiosa, whose arc is communicated almost entirely through action and expression. Authority, vulnerability, and resolve are conveyed kinetically, proving that character development doesn't require speeches, only choices under pressure. The influence was immediate and lasting. Modern action choreography, from stunt-driven franchises to high-end television, began recentering clarity, rhythm, and physical performance. The film reminded Hollywood that action is a visual medium first, and that momentum, when controlled, can carry more meaning than any monologue ever could. What makes Fury Road one of the greatest action films in history is its discipline. There's no filler, no digressions, no indulgent explanation. Every frame pushes forward. In the movie, action isn't something that happens between scenes, it is the scene. And in doing so, Fury Road didn't just perfect kinetic cinema, it proved that after decades of evolution, the genre could still return to its most primal truth. Movement is meaning. I hope we can all appreciate the legacy they all have collectively created. As you can see, action cinema didn't evolve by getting louder, it evolved by solving problems. Each film on this list arrived at a moment of limitation, technical, cultural, or narrative, and pushed the genre forward by answering a specific question. How do you make danger feel real? That's why these films endure. So now it's your turn. Which action film changed the genre for you? What belongs on this list that we missed? If you like this breakdown, hit like, comment, and subscribe for more insights into film history, genre evolution, and why certain movies never stop mattering.